Hi everyone, so we made it. Welcome to day 100 of my art development series. If this is your first time here, my name is Andrew Loren and I'm an artist who's doing a series where I document my everyday art practice and how I think about growing and developing as an artist. So when I started this series about 4 months ago, I had initially intended to do 100 videos. I thought I would start at day 0, do 100 days of practice and kind of see what happened in that 100 days. And now that I've reached 100 days, it actually doesn't feel like much. It feels like nothing. This time flew by. It's almost hard for me to even imagine what I did in each of those days. What was happening around day 30, what was happening around day 60. And so with that in mind, I'm actually just gonna keep continuing. So I've mentioned this for a little while. Even though I'd only intended to do 100 days, I don't intend to stop drawing now. And I actually feel like I'm only starting to scratch the surface of this kind of most recent phase of development in my art practice. So yeah, stopping seems like such a bad idea. It seems like a horrible idea. And on top of that, we recently reached 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. And I had said that when we reached 1,000 subscribers, I was going to do a giveaway of a drawing that I have. And I have not forgotten about that, and I will. I've been a little busy these recent days, so I don't really have any time to send that out, but I will soon do a random drawing of anybody who's subscribing and send them out. So if you're seeing this and I still haven't concluded and drawn the random subscriber, feel free to subscribe and you'll be counted in for the giveaway. But as day 100 was kind of approaching, I was trying to think a lot about what I wanted to do for 100 days. I was like, okay, what can I do that maybe expresses some gratitude for the audience, because I'm super grateful for everybody that tunes in and watches. Something that can be super special for the series. And I must admit, I was having so much trouble coming up with something to do. And then finally it kind of dawned on me that actually doing something different or doing something special is kind of the antithesis of this series. The point of the series is about this monotonous, consistent, everyday practice, showing up, doing the drawing, even maybe when you don't feel like it or when you don't feel inspired, and how do you grow, how do you think about practicing, this kind of unsexy, unromantic, sometimes unsexy, sometimes unromantic, also, as we've seen, sometimes very romantic and a very sexy part of developing your artwork. But symbolically, I think that what I ended up deciding to do today was actually perfect. So I decided to treat day 100 as any other day that we've done, where we're not going to do anything different actually. Even though we've hit a milestone and we're on 100 days, it's even a holiday here in the US. What are we going to do? We're just going to draw. That's what we do every day. So the way to celebrate 100 days is by doing the same thing that we did from day 1 to day 99. And in light of that, I actually went back to a practice that's kind of even more fundamental. So what I did today is I actually worked on some very basic fundamentals, and you can actually see behind me where I just experimented a little bit with rendering very basic shapes. So if you're ever in art school, so I went to an arts high school about a decade ago, 10 years ago, and I was kind of introduced a little bit to the formal practice of art, but I didn't really have any formal training after high school. But one of the very first exercises that you do is you start doing rendering of shapes. And ideally from life, but you can actually do them from photograph as well, but of very basic shapes. So what I was working on today, I had recently been kind of, working on rendering a little bit, so I'm exploring a new medium if you haven't been following along. I'm beginning again to explore newsprint and charcoal, and I haven't really worked with charcoal in a long time, probably a year or two. And so I decided to actually just okay, let's go back to basics. Let's do the most fundamental practice that we possibly could to celebrate day 100. Let's just draw some simple shapes. So I ended up doing a drawing of a sphere. I did a drawing of these two objects that are leaning on each other, and then also just kind of worked on a little bit of a tone. This is just to understand the value range that you have and how to put down tone. And surprisingly, actually, when I had originally thought I was going to do this, I thought, okay, I'll draw for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. This actually took me over an hour, and this was as difficult to do as anything that we've done in this series, whether it was portraiture, whether it was full figure drawings. Believe it or not, just doing these simple exercises and really trying to do them. approaching them with the same seriousness that I would approach a portrait, in the sense of like, I wanted them to be proportionally correct. I wanted the angles to be correct. I wanted the shadows to feel like they really were part of the drawing. I wanted everything to like really have the seriousness of any other exercise that we've done. And I found that when I did that, it took me as long, and it was like as difficult, as challenging. I made as many like corrections with my eraser. I made, it took me as many passes over as it does any other drawing. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I think that I'm actually going to start incorporating these like at least once a week in my practice. I'll just do some simple shape rendering. I think that those videos will probably end up being a bit boring. But I think they're necessary, as I said, in kind of this like symbolic way of, we're really just trying to practice art. We're not trying, this is not, every episode is about trying to create a masterpiece. This is about filling our sketchbook up with things that are going to make us better artists. And frankly, I think I learned a lot from this exercise. My goal was to kind of practice my value range a little bit, and practice a little bit with shading and rendering using this new medium. And I feel like I really learned a lot, and I was very careful to separate my lights from my shadows. So I was actually watching a little tutorial on rendering by Steve Houston, who's one of my favorite living artists. I mean, he's incredible, and he has incredible things to say about art. But he mentions, when it comes to rendering, when it comes to adding value or shadow, there's only one real obligation that you have as an artist. Everything else is up for interpretation, but the one thing you really just have to do is separate your shadows from your lights. And as long as you've separated your shadows from your lights, you can pretty much get away with anything else. But he mentions like your darkest shadow should always be, your lightest shadow should always be darker than the lightest thing in the light area. Like, you need to keep these things as two distinct value ranges. You have your light, like if this is the full range of values, let's say, like this is all the way, as dark as you can go. In this case, it would be like full black for charcoal. And this would be like, full white, or the paper. Well, actually, I'm using an off-white paper, so there's even a value if I would to add a white pencil. But let's say within the range that I'm working, this is like the tone of the paper. Your lights should be in this area, and your darks should be, your shadows should be in this area. And as long as you kind of keep some space in between, and you keep your shadows dark and your lights light, then you can actually, create some like really interesting effects, just like that. And so that was kind of what I was trying to focus on and what I was trying to learn about. And I want to practice these in preparation for doing some renderings on some larger drawings that I want to do. So anyway, I think that's everything. Thank you everyone for tuning in for 100 days. We're going to do 100 more starting tomorrow. And we will continue to practice, continue our daily practice. And thank you also for subscribing and for following along. And let's see how far we can take this series. I'm really excited. And I hope that I inspired you to draw today. Maybe you want to just try and do one of these shapes and think that it'll take only 10 minutes, but let's see how long it actually takes you to do.